I've been really hurt. I've been really hurt in my marriage. I want things to be good, but I don't know which way to turn because right now I feel like, should I even ever love again? What's the point of having a relationship? That's what Cynthia and I are going to talk about here today on the C Note Show. This call is for men that want to have long-term, monogamous, fantastic relationship, intimate relationship. And you want to learn how to solve problems and learn to lead with mojo, and feel like a king in your life. Cynthia and I teach level 3 relationship, deep conscious intimacy, and the art of love. There is the science of love, which we always present here on these calls, the research behind relationship and marriage. And there's the art of how to implement that in our life, even when things are hard, even when things feel like they're completely underwater. Last time we spoke about wife is working to love herself, but does that help our marriage? So go back and watch that previous call. If you're watching this on YouTube, we have hundreds of YouTube videos. And today, I'm afraid to love again and get hurt. So what's next? I like to find out what real people say on our forums and out there, either on Quora or Reddit. And so I found a few examples, and we'll talk with Cynthia about this here right away. This question: is anyone else afraid to fall in love again? This person wrote, "It's been nearly a year since the breakup. I feel like I will never allow myself to fall in love again because of how much pain this has caused me. I'm afraid to let anyone close to me." And this is echoed throughout. Yeah, all the naive parts about love are gone after my first relationship. I'm scared to trust and allow myself to be vulnerable, like there's no point in trying if I'm going to get lied to or cheated on. It hurts that the naive part was wasted on that person. I wish I could go back in time and save that part of me. So I like how this was worded. We're going to obviously talk about this right now. The next person says, "I feel that in my bones." It's less about the pain and more about not wanting to waste years of my life again. What's the point of getting to know a stranger so intimately? And I'm really afraid of opening up to someone at the level I did with my last ex. Granted, it's still fresh, though we broke up around 2 months ago, but I just don't want to deal with the entire falling out of love drama. While it wasn't prominent in our downfall, I did feel it toward the end, and ultimately my temper caused a fight that caused her to run away. Never want to open up again. So obviously this is complicated and deep, and that's what Cynthia and I talk about, complicated and deep shit. And so welcome. I want to talk about this first, the naive parts of love. The naive parts of love. When we speak with men in our, one-on-one coaching in our group, what do you see they mean by the naive parts of love? And I'm scared to trust myself again. And that naive part of me was wasted on the last person. What are you seeing there to start us off, Cynthia?
Starting with the second one, I think that idea of like, oh my gosh, years were wasted, or this part of me was wasted, this very open part of me was wasted on someone. Just want to call out the very human experience. I've been in women's groups where they've talked about this too. The very human experience of we have regrets that there's somehow in the past it should have looked different, been shinier. And I think that relates to this idea of naive parts. As a kid, and maybe as we grow up in our culture, maybe it's the fairy tales or the movies, there's the idea that love will be shiny and that will attract a partner that will promise to love us in the ways that we always wanted to love, and that there's never any rift in that. Because the rift feels like the ultimate betrayal. We're looking for the wholeness, the synergy that can come together in our union. And the fact that love has rugged pieces, has Wild West pieces, to me is very exciting because the possibility there is infinite, but it does wear so heavily on the heart of us, the part of us that was thinking that this is a kind of a level one story that will sustain forever and ever.
The level one story. And so if you haven't heard, level one, we say is instinctual, more of the honeymoon, more of the surface level idea of what love and relationship and marriage are. Level 2 is the verbal communication, how to ask for what you want in a healthy way. And then level 3 is building spiritual connection, depth and growth through intimacy, through sexuality, through spiritual vision and belief. and not religious necessarily, but what is spiritual beyond what we can count on our fingers, the vision of the future. What do we want? How do we ask for what we want and cultivate what we want? Okay, so the naive part of us wants the Disney story love that never has a rift, that never has any problems, and we want the other person to do that for us. And we have our ego involved in that. And all of a sudden, when our projection of their perfection isn't met, then what? Then why does she run away, Cynthia? Why does she go bail and look for something new?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that goes to this very normal core pursuit that we're going to be with someone who loves us exactly in the right way. And they will fail at that. And they're supposed to fail at that. It's just some experiences, if it's kind of at that level one and level two, it feels like the betrayal. Why is she running away? Why is she throwing out the baby with the bathwater? Well, because of her own wounds. And I think the answer to that, beyond just the human experience, is that we are looking for something that's level three, where we get to be met in relationship, where there's rifts at time, but it's held in this container that this is something bigger than us, and there's something to be learned and gained.
So, two big things I want to ask. Can you relate to this feeling of, I don't want to fall in love again because I'm afraid? If you're here live, punch a one into the chat or punch a sentence about this. So who can relate to I'm afraid to fall in love again? And who can relate to, well, I know I want to grow something deeper. I know I want to grow a level three relationship, hopefully with the woman that I'm with, hopefully with my wife, but if not, with at least someone, at least a woman in my life. Who can relate to these topics? And we'll step forward and then we'll read in the chat. So some research. This is by PhD Lisa Firestone from Psychology Today. I'm not going to read the article, just some highlights. 3 ways to tell you're afraid of love. How can you identify if your fear of closeness is getting in the way of love? Well, one, your actions don't match your intentions. And I'm sure men will see potentially currently their wife's behavior in some of this stuff. If your actions don't match your intentions, right? Always watch someone's behavior, their actions, including yours. That's the point here is we can only control ourselves. She writes, for some people, your anxiety around relationship is apparent. You may consciously notice their instinct to pull away from connection or commitment. For others, it can be more subtle. They may feel as if they're trying for closeness when their actions are leading to just the opposite. Because of this confusion, the first thing to reflect on is how much we think we want lines up with our behavior. So, how much does our behavior line up with what we say or think we want? Number two, you're becoming hypercritical of your partner or potential partners. This is a way to tell you're afraid of love. One of the most common complaints between couples after they've been together for a while is that they lose the spark or stop feeling as excited or attracted to each other. A lot of this has to do with our defense system. More closeness feels more threatening. Therefore, when things get more serious, we start to force distance by indulging in much more negative thoughts and observations of our partner. I want to ask you about this, Cynthia. Indulging in our negative thoughts. We are going to have thoughts. Your brain creates thoughts. They aren't you. If you're aware of mindfulness or meditation or conscious awareness, you will have been practiced that your thoughts are not you. Your mind generates mysterious, quote, random thoughts. Your ego also fires out thoughts that aren't necessarily true. And number two here, when you indulge in these negative thoughts and observations as a way of pushing away, pushing closeness away because it feels threatening. What are
Mhm.
you seeing there, Cynthia? This idea of indulging in pushing away because of indulging in negative thoughts. What do you see there?
Yeah, I think that's the crazy wonderful part of relationship, is that as time goes past, and I'll speak as a woman, your the layers of how your perception of relationship shift and change, but that's because the intimacy, the emotional intimacy, the spiritual intimacy is actually going deeper into your experience. And so you're gonna hit the things that are most afraid of love. Even if, quote unquote, everything in the relationship is perfect on the outside, I would beg to differ that every woman and maybe every human being, there's some fear about love. And so when I observe women, I mean, there's there is the road where they're asking for more closeness, they're asking for more connection, they're asking for more growth and understanding. Or there's the road where unconsciously that deepest fear of love is getting rattled. And so, what's easier to feel than that fear is the I'm going to push away and make you bad. What's easier to feel than fear and sadness? Oh, I'm going to feel resentment. And then I'm going to get stuck in a almost a dopamine loop, as if I'm clinging to the edge of the dock, terrified to actually swim out into the water.
And that's well said. And learning these animalistic behavioral approaches and reasons is a huge reason of why we're here, is to learn these things about our own selves, man or woman. And number three, way to tell you're afraid of love. Your feelings suddenly shift. Once again, what we say we want is suddenly in question the minute we seem to get it. In a relationship, we may react to a particularly precious and close time with our partner by picking a fight or doing something that pushes them away and makes us feel less vulnerable. Most of us fail to realize it, but we actually have a much lower tolerance for being present with our feelings of love and being loved than we think. I'll read that sentence again. Most of us fail to realize it, but we actually have a much lower tolerance for being present with our feelings of love and being loved than we think. This is often because being connected to someone else also connects us to our fears around loss and the pain of not having felt that love in the past. So, Cynthia, what are you seeing there? Often because being connected to someone else also connects us to our fear around loss and of the pain of not having felt that love in the past. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, and it seems crazy to say I've spoken of this in the past with a woman's need almost to expand her balloon and her ability to receive the gift of who you are as a man in her life and what you're giving. And absolutely her feeling, taking in how much you're giving, that can be a really vulnerable experience. It can be something that you might see your woman immediately have a deflective pattern in order to not experience the almost the overwhelm of what love is doing to our body. And it's actually it's such a good thing because it really does. We can't, and I would say women can't experience past feelings of abandonment or loss or not enoughness without having a buoy of love to cling to. They just don't seem always to have the understanding that that's what's going on.
So, what's a practiced woman, a woman that's aware, that's doing her feminine work, let's say, and her relational work, let's say, and wants level three? What's the buoy of love that you're referring to? What does that look like in an advanced practitioner?
Well, I would say even comment about I'd love to grow level three relationship with my own self. And so what I see is women almost putting up sometimes like a plexiglass shield so she doesn't quite take in what love she's receiving. And so a woman's practice is to recognize, ooh, this is here because this makes me feel really vulnerable and undone and unbelievable that you and your sacred masculine is standing in front of her. And so the level three practice for her is to feel it and then allow that window to come a little bit closer to her and a little bit closer to her. And even just take a sip in the moment of taking the overwhelm of this. And even I practice taking in love and beautiful things around me. I take in the autumn leaves. I practice letting it get through that little bit of shielding and reach my heart.
So, you just did a big breath. If a man is watching a woman attempt that in the moment, what will he see? What will he see from the outside that she's doing to try to practice what you're just explaining there, this level three? What will he see her do?
He might see her take that deep breath. And I think there's kind of like this rolling motion because she's really allowing it to go through her whole body. There might be, if she's a little bit collapsed in her body language, there's a kind of even trying to open the shoulders. She might try to lean in more and immediately try to give something back, like love back, as trying to practice taking that in. But I think even sharing with you again, and this is like level 3 relationship, her sharing, wow, this is very, I have to breathe to take all this in.
So imagine this. Let's just take a pause for a second. Imagine your woman is doing those things in front of you. Can you at the same time as a man in this practice breathe, not be pulled astray by your own emotions or expectations or anger? Can you notice what's going on with her and still and relax your own self at the same time? Imagine that skill. Imagine it's a new sport for you without needing to defend, without needing to explain something, without telling her how disappointed you are. And that's where we shoot ourselves in the foot. Imagine doing those things at the same time while she's, say again, what is she attempting to do? If she, especially if she's trying to give something back, what might she do or what might she say?
Uh, that's hard to not feel jaded because even if you're standing in front of someone who's trying to do this and open to you, and there's so much of the past that she shut you down in every moment, yeah, this is incredibly difficult. Uh, if she's trying to give back in the moment because she's a little like, okay, I can take that in, but I have to give something back so I feel more grounded in my body, she might almost mimic. If you use words, she might say the same thing to you. Sometimes even that comment of, I love you, she might say I love you right away back, because that's her practice of, oh, I take that in, that's a lot, okay, if I say it back, I feel a little bit more safe and less overwhelmed.
Okay. Imagine that she's not going to say I love you right now. Okay. So what I heard you say there is she'll parrot something back
Yeah.
just to try to appease maybe. But imagine she's more angry and she's trying to say something positive. What is the man going to see potentially? Maybe not the words exactly, but what is he going to see?
You might actually see her eyes. They're not looking at you directly the way we might crave, we might hope, but she's kind of looking up to either side. And that's her trying to pull in a truth, maybe beyond the immediate emotional experience. And so she's either kind of imagining something or hearing something and pulling it into to share.
Okay. Yeah, these I wanted to ask, these are more advanced ideas, and you as a man have to be doing practice to even notice these things. I had a call with, well, many men yesterday, but one of them I asked this. When he praised his wife, how did she respond? Did she relax? Did she breathe deeply? Did she smile? Did she move more in her body? And he said, ooh, you know what? I didn't notice any of those things. I was just kind of in my own world. And so that's an advanced practice. All right, let's go back to the chat here. Quite a few posts in the chat, comments in the chat. Okay. From the end of Annie Hall. After that, I got, okay, I'm not sure where this is going. Here we go. After that, it got pretty late and we both had to go, but it was great seeing Annie again, right? I realized what a terrific person she was. And I thought how much fun it was just knowing her and I thought of that old joke, this guy goes to a psychiatrist and says, Doc, my brother's crazy. He thinks he's a chicken. And the doctor says, well, why don't you turn him in? The guy says, I would, but I need the eggs. Well, I guess that's pretty much how I've felt about relationships. They're totally irrational and crazy and absurd. But I guess we keep going through it because most of us need the eggs. Wasn't sure where that was going, but that was good. It's not just the fairy tale. Some of us had parents who struggled, who did not have fairy tale romances, but who still stayed together. Yeah, the staying together is a bit of a different topic. And yes, I think we all do need the eggs. We all at least want the eggs. We want the eggs of connection and intimacy and romance. And that's what we, in this call, is for men. We are here to learn how to do, how to lead ourselves. We turn our shoulders for our own self and understanding our ego and our shadow and all of our own shit and our mistakes. And a lot of that is talking too much, trying to fix. And then when we turn toward relationship, how do we invite? How do we cultivate the eggs? It's exactly what we're here to talk about. Another man said, how do I trust to recognize and know what love really is? Thought I knew, but I guess I got it wrong. Feels like after divorce, I'm not letting myself get there. That's a great question. I've said before, and I'll say many times, that you'll love different women in different ways. You'll feel love. And this is true for me and true for men that I speak with. And I'm happy for any man to refute this. I feel we'll love different people in different ways, whether it's parents, children, pets, women, girlfriends, wives. If you have more than one woman in your life, I feel you'll love them in a different way. They'll feel different. It'll feel like a different love in your heart. And the whole point of my grabbing this Reddit post about the naive parts of love are gone. I'm scared to trust and allow myself to be vulnerable. Like the naive part was wasted on that person. I think almost all of us have a naive part that gets burned off through the fire of disappointment and life, really shit that happens in life. By the way, whether it's career or parenting or our ailing, aging parents. We all have a naive part of us that, well, or is forced to be burned off, unless we live in a box our whole life. And even then, that's debatable whether what's being burned off or not, what's being sacrificed or not. So how do I trust what love really is? I mean, it's a deep question, right? So Cynthia, let's give this one or two passes and then we'll take a step forward. That's a whole topic, which is great. We could highlight that another time. So what love really is, I thought I knew, but I guess I got it wrong. I'm not allowing myself to get there. So is there a get there again? Is there a get back to the same place again in your perspective?
Oh, that's a great question. I think to resonate with the energy of what gets burned off, I don't think we're supposed to get to the same place again. It reminds me a little bit of the version 1.0 of relationship, whether we're talking about version 1.0 of love. And that bridge, if getting back on the same bridge, maybe in the moment or the first 6 months feels like eating cotton candy again, and like, oh, there's like finally got here, and then like kind of like rest and don't have to try at this, and this is just will be good. And it never quite is that, because that bridge has shifted and changed and rusted, because there's version 2.0, and maybe there's even version 3.0. And how lovely that is, how amazing that is. Sometimes we don't even know what that looks like, but there is that drive to have that. And I say that's amazing because the benefits of that are, it's like suddenly finding that you're in the jungle of flowers and parrots and it's full of life. But then I also recognize that there's a barrenness of that, because what does that look like? And is it going to be a lot of work? And what if the same patterns are repeated?
So if I pull back the curtain, you've done a lot of work to see love and pain and suffering and then a new relationship in a positive way. You've done work. Is this true? So you've done work to see all of that in the way that you just described, how adventurous this is, and it's a new version of self. And what what helped you get there? What helped you move through not wanting to trust love again at some point in your life?
Mm, I think it was doing this kind of work and learning about, God, what is feminine energy in me and what is masculine energy in the other, because it really helped to identify that there is this otherness, this third entity of relationship that is bigger than my little self and bigger than my human self and bigger than beliefs I carry, whether it's from my parents or I just came into life with how it should be and how it should be easy or how it looks easy for everyone else. Uh, there is a biggerness to it. And that's why, to me, polarity is so magical. And leaning into feminine and masculine is so powerful because it has the ability to create this other place that, again, the moving toward can feel like being in the slogs of the desert, but then being there is like you found the fountain, the water, and you know that part of your path has brought you to this point, and it was kind of everything was put in the path for this kind of reason.
And that's the perspective you've had to cultivate and practice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's still regrets and there's still hurts for naive parts along the way of the journey. And even though sometimes I wish that wasn't part of it, I regret that there's regret. There's something powerful to go through this human experience together where we all have those pieces. We all have those regrets. We all have the grief of letting the naive part grow or go. And essentially, I feel like that's a really important part of relationship on all levels with our kids or with our friends or with our lover.
Yeah, that's well said. That's going to dovetail. Cynthia never knows what I prepare for the slides and the 3 points that I'm going to show at the end of the call, and that's going to dovetail really well into that. Let's take a look at the chat again. I can relate. I do think it will never be quite the same. For example, I won't get married again, at least not without a prenup. Sure. Sure. I'd love to go a level 3. You mentioned that one before. In tangent with eventually inviting another female into my life, a level 3 within my own self. That's well put, and I'm going to mention that before we get off the call here today, too. Another man, he says ditto to the other comment. After 2 failed marriages and now exploring dating, I have an entirely different perception on relationships. Yeah, 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 yeah. And then the one you referenced, Cynthia. I think it can be hard to not feel jaded when the person who said they'd stand with you through thick and thin doesn't lean in when you acknowledge your shortcomings and do the work on yourself, when they don't step fully into tackling it together. It makes it hard to trust in level 3. Isn't that part of it though? Question mark. Isn't that part of it? Question mark. The shared and supported spiritual growth through relationship. Isn't that supposed to be part of this? The shared and supported spiritual growth through relationship. I think the jaded brain says when you really needed it to be there, it's not. So why would you lean into it again? One, yeah, of course. Yes, absolutely. Now that we, including myself, speaking about myself here, are aware that there is such a thing as level 3, that there is a way to build spiritual connection and growth through difficult times together, that having a vision past the current landscape is important. What's the horizon that we're always walking toward? What's the journey together? What are we building? How are we channeling divine or spiritual energy or the power of the stars through us to cultivate and grow the relationship between us? These are all concepts I had zero idea of before this work, right? I was the same. You go to school, you get a job, get married, have kids, I guess, and then live happily ever after, I suppose. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? And I check those boxes, and guess what? That's that's not happily ever after. There's a hell of a lot more past job, kids, marriage than our parents knew how to explain to us, or at least my parents. So let's step forward. Key points from the same PhD. When couples forego real love for a fantasy bond, and I would say the fantasy bond is simply the naivete and what our parents didn't know how to teach us beyond just a level 1 per se, or they had something they didn't know how to explain or teach potentially. So when couples forego real love for a fantasy bond and its illusion of fusion and safety, the illusion of safety, they can experience a lack of affection. So, how do we grow? What does affection mean? And the second point, research has shown that taking more loving actions actually makes people feel more in love. So, love and relationship is a verb, the act of love. And thirdly, often the challenge isn't finding love, but daring to face one's own defenses and let love develop. And that's a huge piece of this work, too, is what are our own defenses? So, our 3 points: I'm afraid to love again and get hurt. What's next? Oh, yes. If you want to be a part of these calls, these calls are free. You can go to our website here and put in your email address, and you'll get invites to these calls, invites to our book that's coming out, and our teaching videos, our YouTube videos. So greatmenmovemountains.com/new subscriber. And if you're watching this, but you're not getting automatic notifications of these calls, go here or go here again if you feel like you've done it. Something's not working right. So go here again, greatmenmovemountains.com/new subscriber, and punch in your email. And we've got free stuff and we've got paid coaching too. Check out our stuff. So, number 1, I'm afraid to love again and get hurt. What's next? Number 1 is radical acceptance of where you are right now. And every man that is watching this or comes to these calls, I believe, wants to be in acceptance of what's going on so that you can take a step forward in a smart way. If you feel lost in the woods and you don't know which way to walk, it just feels like overwhelm and confusion. But if someone can lay out the map and at least point you in the right direction, the dragon you want to slay is that way. then you're aware of where you are right now. And that takes radical acceptance. What would you say about that, Cynthia? Radical acceptance of where you are right now.
That's something I really respect and honor about masculine energy is the ability to be in acceptance of what is with that kingly vision of what is, because I'm also able to hold, vision for what's to come. I think having acceptance in the moment takes incredible courage and incredible self-worth. And it is pretty amazing that that is the thing that, at least if I feel into my body as a woman, that the thing you can do first to unhook negative ties to the woman in front of you, the woman who maybe is trying to actively push away, actively trying to armor herself, because your acceptance is so powerful that she actually has to kind of come back to her own body. And it's something that she can feel in you that will breed respect, that will breed honor. And it's the only path forward where she can begin to step towards you again.
Absolutely. There's so much more to say about this. And if you have questions, reach out to us. Radical acceptance is a part of all modern therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a part of all modern research over the past 80 years, 100 years is radical acceptance. We've come to that in our modern day. So how do I do that? Doesn't mean you like it. Doesn't mean you don't have sadness or emotions or grief or feelings of shame or blame for her, or you feel like you're trapped in a hole. It doesn't mean that you don't feel the way you do, but it's the opening your eyes, taking the binoculars off of your face and looking down to see, where am I really right now? What am I really facing right now? That's number one. Number two, grow internal and external skills. So internal is, how do I see myself? Where can I take responsibility? What actions can I take next? Right? What's my spiritual, my relational, spiritual, and connections with community? What are my skills with friends or other men that are going through this, or a sports club in town, or a hiking club, or whatever it may be? And relational, what do I do next in my marriage? And spiritual, how do I see my own self internally and externally? Maybe I want to make more money or get in shape. Those are external things. Maybe I want to make more friends. Well, maybe I feel trapped and lost in my own sadness every day, and I've been there before. That's an internal skill. What do I do with that? And number three, then you build connections slowly. You build new connections slowly on top, and then welcome impermanence. Building new connections slowly. How do I love again? You want to build new connections slowly, not just jump into something again with your wife or a new woman. It needs to be built with a new bridge across the river, and slowly. And then welcoming impermanence is a whole topic in and of itself as well, that your relationship will end at some point. Maybe it's today, maybe it's 50 years from now. Your child will no longer be on this planet at some point. Hopefully, after you die, maybe tomorrow. This idea of impermanence, and how do I connect with peace within my own self while I still have the roller coaster of fun and the cotton candy of, sex and intimacy and connection in that moment. There's still the idea of, this is all going to end at some point, and that's a deep masculine practice. Cynthia, what are you seeing in these final 2 points here? Skills and build connections slowly while welcoming impermanence. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I love the last one is kind of that go slow to go fast experience, which I feel is so about extending timelines, allowing timelines to be longer than maybe our human selves would really like them to be. But there is so much gold in that presence and patience. I see in how the masculine rebuilds, reintertwines connection, and stands in his incredible worth of what he gets to be and do and have in this life, relationally, spiritually, through community. uh, and it just puts me in a state of because it is funny, if I were to show these especially the last point to a woman in her feminine, she would not want to go slow and she would not want impermanence. And there, so to me, that really shows something incredible about you, and that is your wisdom, as if you knew the secrets, the wise words of standing in hundreds of years old redwood forest. That's the kind of energy I feel in you. And that's the kind of energy that's going to pull towards you the feminine who wants, like, I want more of that, because it's something she doesn't source in herself very well.
Yeah, thank you. Come on in. So, real quick, when you said maybe love and intimacy is different when we're a different person, plus the potential partner may not be the same person as well. How do you mean when we're a different person? How do you relate to that?
Through the growth and the work that we're doing, we're not going to be the same, hopefully, repeat of the person that was in the first marriage or relationship, whatever the case is. Plus, if if you're in my case, is the likelihood of us getting together is extremely remote. So, meet somebody else, that's going to be a completely different person, which requires, a different mindset.
Mm.
And you can't I don't believe you could really look at things like, what your prior relationship, what irritated you may not irritate you anymore. And, that person may not even do it to begin with. So I think you just gotta, have to kind of figure it out as you go along. But jumping into something right away, you're just going to bring some of those bad habits with you. And, it's kind of like, should I expect different results? Probably not.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Do you feel like you're in touch with your own self in a different way? Your own sense of ability to bring peace into the moment, for instance?
I'd say like 95% of the time.
That's good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. How do you do
Yeah.
that? Imagine there's a man that just started this and he's at peace 5% of the time or 1% of the time. He thinks, damn, how does do that? What's a crux of it for you? What's a key for it to bring peace into your own self?
Well, it takes time first. I mean, it just doesn't happen overnight. But, if I find myself starting to go off the tracks, I just kind of like sit back, I'll just take a breath and then, respond and not react. That's
So how
that's
do you do
about it.
that?
Yeah.
How do you not just react? How do you respond? What do you do in that moment?
Well, just just take a breath, just like hold off a minute. And then, I think also it comes with a sense of, developing emotional intelligence as well as I'm trying to think of the right word here, being present.
Mm.
So, if like I'm like half paying attention to something and then all of a sudden I get that trigger, I'm more apt to react. But if I'm present, that whatever that trigger was is not coming as a surprise.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks. So Cynthia, to close us out, when you see practice presence, emotional control, not reacting, how does that hit you as a woman? What does a woman feel in that presence of his non-reactivity?
Mm. I think even just what I experienced in the moment when you were speaking, there's a calmness I felt through my body, and a peace and a groundedness because of your presence practice, and even your nod to the imperfectness of all of us. I really appreciated, because I could feel you have your own kingly eye on that, and almost your own internal chuckle. And I think that can affect the feminine really powerfully, because she feels like there's room to dance with that, and even shed her own layers of, I need to be perfect in order to whatever the goal is for her in relationship.
Don't need to be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Cynthia.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. See you next time. Ciao.